Podcast. Check me out at rodneospeaks.com. All right, so I have a slight orange slice addiction, and if you don't know what orange slices are, they are these sugar-covered gummy candies that are the best candies in the world. I'm not talking about orange slices as a real orange where you get a slice or a wedge. I'm talking about a nice candied sugar goodness, right? And so I can control a lot of things. I can control eating a lot of things. Actually, I like to work out. I like to lift. I like to eat healthy. But when I'm around these orange slices, I just cannot control myself. Like I'll eat the whole thing, the whole bag until there's nothing left. Right. And so I had this going away from my last employer. They did this big thing for me where they were sending me off. I was leaving and they had, it must have been, man, I may be exaggerating because I don't know volume that well, but a 5-gallon jug full of them. And so when we were done, they said, take this home. This is for you. And I'm thinking, I'm going to take this home and I should really just throw it in the garbage. Right. But how can you throw away all of these nice candied sugary goodness? Right. So what I did with them, every time I walked by the thing, every time I walked by the jar, I would sit there and eat all of them. Like I would take 2 or 3. I go back downstairs by the kitchen, grab 2, leaving the door, going on a trip somewhere, going to, coming back from the gym, going to the store. I grab a couple of them. And so I couldn't help myself. And so I had a lack of self-control. And so I want to welcome you to the O-Cast. And if you don't know me, you can read my bio. I'm at rodneospeaks.com. And I'm doing a series called The Building Blocks for Life. And so each block kind of builds off each other, right? These blocks, they're useful for a full and productive life. And I believe that these will really help you have a full and productive life. And so I want to talk about self-control a little bit. And so what would you say about self-control? Do you think you have self-control? Like if you talk about your eating habits, what are your eating habits like? Fast food is everywhere. I mean, food, if you look around, there's always a restaurant, always a new thing opening up everywhere you go. And I am not a fan of like McDonald's. I think McDonald's is evil. I think McDonald's is the worst thing in the world. Supersize me. You guys seen that, right? They should just close them all down. But I know that won't happen because people like fast food. I mean, I understand they're convenient. It's really easy to go and get a snack, right? If don't want to cook dinner, you can go and get that, right? But I mean, McDonald's and fast food is everywhere. Processed foods are everywhere. They make them really cheap, really, really cheap. They make them convenient, throw them in a microwave, and there you go, right? And so a lot of us with the eating habits don't have self-control because they make these things with some secret ingredients. Do you know what the secret ingredients are? I'll tell you in a second. These are secret ingredients that make these things so good, so addictive, right? Secret ingredients: salt, fat, and sugar, right? Those are the things that make you say, this is so good and I can't live without this. Now, what about media? Like, do you watch entire seasons of Arrested Development or Stranger Things or 13 Reasons Why? I mean, why would you watch that anyway? But Orange is the New Black. I mean, all these Netflix shows, right? You just kind of binge watch. You kind of just nestle up on an evening, on a weekend, and then next thing you know, it's Monday morning, and you watch an entire series on Netflix, right? Self-control. Like movies now, for the weekend box office, they're opening earlier and earlier. Thursday usually, I think Thursday at midnight is where the premieres happen. Okay, and they count that as quote unquote the weekend instead of it's opening on Friday. Pretty soon it's going to be Thursday morning when things are open, right? Because we want to see our movies. We're in the on-demand world, right? This kind of creates us to have a lack of self-control because we are in a world where everything is on demand. We get to see things. We get to do things when we want to. Think about the internet. If the internet goes out in your house, right? You are calling your internet provider soon, asking what is going on. Why is my internet out? I cannot live without the internet. If you lose your cell phone service, no data, you go crazy, right? It's like, what is going on? I cannot live without this. What about our emotions? When we talk about self-control and our emotions, we all know that person that's angry, right? That kind of blows up. The smallest issues, little things can go wrong. And they're sitting there saying, just going off on you. And you're like, oh my gosh, what happened? It's like, I just spilled some water. It will dry. Why are you going crazy, right? We all know that person who can't control themselves with intimacy, right? They always need somebody. They always need to be with somebody, and it can be harmful. We all know that person that kind of cries and complains about everything. Everything that happens, they're kind of out of control and complaining about everything. right? You have our secret vices. Huge industry. You know what a huge industry is? An industry that anytime there's a new technology, they are the first ones to jump on the bandwagon. They're the first ones to really go out and just attack that technology and embrace it. And that's the porn industry, right? And it depends on how you feel. Some people say, oh, a little bit is fine. Everybody watches it. Everybody does it. But when you talk about self-control, that is something that can make your life go out of control. Substance abuse. People with addictive personalities get addicted to things and abuse certain substances. So, in this day and age, and my point is, in this day and age, when we talk about self control, everything that is out there from technology to media, everything to food appeals to our desires. We have these sensual desires and we are stimulated all the time. So when I say sensual, that means it's something that's gratifying to our sensual appetites, our flesh, right? It makes us excited. And so you say, so what? What's the harm? What's the harm of these things that are just stimulating us all the time? Well, when we don't take care of our bodies because of our unhealthy eating, we suffer. And people say, it's funny because people say like, "Oh, you're fat shaming," and I don't fat shame people. I don't care what size you are. I just don't want you to have a heart attack, right? I just don't want you to have cardiac arrest. You know, maybe you don't need to eat out 4 times a day. Maybe get a healthy meal. Maybe put the soda down for a little bit. Because what happens when we lose control? Our medical bills go through the roof. We have procedures that we have to do medically, right? And then it just feeds the industry, the medical industry, and we pay medical bills. And I've had my share of experiences of medical bills, and they're not fun. And then what they do is they prescribe you drugs. They give you prescription drugs. And so you get these prescription drugs you have to spend money for, and then you get addicted to them. And then you keep feeding the beast, right? And so all because we don't have self-control over our eating, that these things happen. And then when we talk about our cell phones, right? When we talk about our gratification from everything being constant access, everything being on demand. I see people and they have these little challenges where they're saying, I'm going to go off my cell phone for 7 days. And that's a big deal. It wouldn't be a big deal if we didn't think that those things make us lose our self-control. Not everybody. But we get impatient when internet stops. I mentioned this before. We get impatient when there's no cell phone service. People talk about verbal communication. When you're out at dinner and you see people sitting there, a family, and people are out on their cell phones, is that a self-control issue? Or is that just a sign of the times? And so I'm saying all of this, not saying everything's not, all this is not necessarily bad. It's only bad when we lose control from lack of patience or not having these devices. It's only bad if we recognize that we don't have self-control over these things. So the big thing about self-control is there may be a disconnect with other people. We have huge bills it costs us. It costs us our health. And so what we need to do is we need to choose a way out. We need to choose a way out of all these things that will cause us to not have self-control. And so how do we do this? I mean, it's easier said than done most of the time. And so I am a person of faith. I'm a person that believes in God. And so these building blocks that I'm getting, they're all coming from the Bible. So those of you who do believe in the Bible and read the Bible, it's 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 to 11 is where I'm getting them from. And some believe in karma. Some believe in a universe equals out. But all that to say is that even the 12-step programs talk about a higher power, right? And so people like me, people who are faith-based like me, believe sensual desires are not from God. It's not from the Spirit of God. And so therefore, it's a spiritual battle, not a physical one. So we look to God to kind of guide us and fight us off these desires. But to the people out there who may not believe in God, or just maybe believe in karma and the universe, there's still a thing. And even for us as faith-based people, is that we need to still do our part. We need to choose. One of my favorite trilogies out there is The Matrix. And I'm going to be dating myself a little bit, but The Matrix, oh my gosh, was so good. If you haven't seen The Matrix, I'm not sure where you've been living and what's wrong with you, or you're very, very young, right? And The Matrix is all about choice, right? And so one of the scenes is the Oracle is telling Neo that if the story is already written for me and my path of life is set, do I really have a choice? And that was a question Neil had for the oracle. And the oracle was this all wise, all knowing person. And so basically, Neil was the chosen one. He was the one that was going to deliver people from the matrix. And he's saying, like, if all this is already written out for me, do I have a choice? And the response was, you already made the choice. Now you have to understand why. And that's what I think we need to do about self control. We need to understand why we choose what we do to move forward. And I mean, there's counselors out there that can help you, there's counselors out there that can guide you. When we think about why do we choose to eat unhealthy things, maybe it's convenience, but that convenience means that we have poor planning. So if we choose to plan properly, we probably wouldn't have these health problems and we probably eat better. Cheap food means we're not buying the proper food. I mean, the minimum wage increase, and I don't want to get political, but that's made food and fast food more expensive. So feeding the family of four, eating out every night actually is not cheap. Now, maybe processed foods, you may argue, is pretty cheap, but I can tell you that cooking good food, cooking regular food by far is not only healthier, but can probably be cheaper than processed foods. But again, our laziness and our poor planning stops us from this. So we need to choose to do that. Sometimes it's just plain gluttony. We just want that thing. We're just sitting there and we say, no, I want this. I know it's bad for me, but I want this, right? We love our fats and sugars and salt. And so we don't train our palate correctly. And if we were to train it correctly, we would be more inclined to eat good foods. Anger. Sometimes it's something from our past. And this is where therapy, this is where counselors, this is where talking to somebody can come in, because there may be an unresolved issue that is causing you to be so angry. It may be a deeper feeling or meaning than what is actually happening. There may be something else going on that makes you angry at your spouse, angry at your kids. Maybe there's something that happened at work. Maybe there's something deeper that happened in the past you need to dig up and you need to take care of. And again, that comes with choice. Same with drugs. How are you coping with what you're doing? How are you coping with your situations? So again, all of these are choice. And I don't want to give the impression that this is very easy. I don't want to give the impression that I covered everything in this podcast. This is just things that are on my mind that I want to share, I want to help people with. And so feedback and comments are much appreciated. But I do know the first step begins with making a choice. You disagree with me, go ahead, contact me. All my social medias, on my website, on my podcast page. Go ahead and drop me a note, a comment. But when we add self-control to these building blocks for life, and I encourage you to check out the rest of the building blocks that I have on my podcast, we're adding another key to having a full and productive life when we can get this self-control in check. And so don't let the world get to you. Don't let things out there get to you that where you lose self-control. And again, make a choice. Make a choice for the better. Start with that choice. And so this is Rodney O signing out. RodneyOSpeaks.com. I will see you guys in the next one.